Hi, my name is Buki Animashao. I'm the artist Buki Mariam, and I'm the mixed media abstract artist working on the legacy of water. I've been an artist since about 2015. I'm an abstract artist. I'm very motivated by what's in my mind, capturing that in a visual language that is unique to me. I've been working on that language for as long as my career has been going, and I'm interested in kind of evolving that with each new project and each new piece. So the evolution of my process has been interesting to me. That's who I think I am as an artist. Is somebody who's always trying to evolve the way that they communicate their thoughts. So the project I did before this one was exploring womanhood as an abstract concept, which led me to the idea of kind of like matrilineal heritage, right? We're very used to thinking about your lineage as, your father's family and his father before him because, the patriarchy. It really made me curious about like where my mom is from and what that means to me as a person living in this moment. And that led me to the truth that I am the great great granddaughter of Candido da Rocha, who built a strong legacy in what Lagos is today. It's a legacy that is deep with many different facets of, who we are as people, how we migrated all around the world, how we've changed cultures, how we've changed ourselves, and the resilience it kind of takes to do that over time. So I wouldn't have been able to kind of zone in on those values as values that have been passed down by my family if I didn't do this kind of research on like who are these people and why are they like who are they to me as a person, and then to find out that they were so many things to so many people culturally is actually quite interesting to interact with. To be honest, I think learning about myself is what inspired the painting, right? Learning more about who I am is what interested me and why I found it intriguing to express. And finding all these complex layers that I'm speaking about now inspired the way that I then presented them visually. In the painting, there's a lot of tumultuous blue happening, which signifies the idea that water, for my ancestry specifically, kind of took people away traumatically, but it also um, brought them back, and it gave them a lot of prosperity and wealth, right? It gave them a certain kind of understanding of, it gave them the ability to build the family that we have become now. So water for me is both a bit of a, destabilizing figure in terms of this narrative, but it's also a healing visual for me. I think it's tumultuous and there's a bit of, pressure that comes with water kind of naturally. It can be anything that you want to be. So I like playing with that element, both in the painting and in the way that I was thinking about this kind of like narrative work. Underneath the blues of the water, there's also lots of images of people to show this kind of submersion that people had to go through to signify this self-sacrifice narrative. It's not a woe is me narrative, right? It's not a way to like express that, oh, look at all the people we've lost over the years. It's just to acknowledge the truth that like these processes are in fact very aggressive processes. They are oppressive processes and they stress generationally the people who undergo those processes. You can still, if you draw the line, you can still draw a direct link to a lot of those traumas to the people from the families who are living right now till today. And we are still working through them whilst living inside of this like this structure, right? While trying to be the dream that that they were all striving for. The people who speak English, right? Oh, right off the bat, the people who like are sitting in different rooms and having conversations that our ancestors could only dream of, right? Who can understand power structures that people before us could never contend with. That's the manifestation of the dream, but it definitely comes at a cost. Creativity, just as a basic skill, I think is something that I connect to. The idea that they brought back a lot of these skills. I mean, they went with a lot of skill as well. That's why they were valuable, but they also brought back a lot of dynamic skill. And they applied it in a way that was very uniquely indigenous, right? Like they were solving indigenous problems. They were innovating for the sake of the person who lives here, not for the sake of exclusively, right? The people who built whatever the systems were at the time. And I connect with that innovative spirit, that resilient spirit. If I'm honest, I think it's intriguing to process because some of it is pride, but also some of it is a deep empathy because they also brought with them, truthfully, a sense that the world was not a fair place, right? That the world was an unfair place and they had to deal with that truth because they had lived so viscerally through unfair practices. And I think a lot of those things are difficult to reconcile, and how they must have been living emotionally, psychologically. I feel a lot of empathy for them, truthfully, because they felt a lot of pressure to be people that they were not naturally. And they put a lot of pressure on themselves, on their children. You know, people were going to Catholic schools, Anglican schools. You're learning a language that is not your mother tongue, right? You come home and you don't speak the same language as people inside of your household. You may be only, you may only be able to educate one person in a family. You don't, these dynamics you build into. So there's little cutouts in the painting that are of the traditional like European alphabet, English alphabet. So they're represented throughout the painting, but they're etched into the figures because they are the force with which a lot of these people were educated was aggressive, right? A lot of people in the time where Candido da Rocha lived, where people were going to CMS grammar school and things like that, you're learning under like, a very strict Monsignor or somebody like that who is telling you through some very directly denigrating information that you are not good enough and you have to catch up, you have to meet up, you have to ingrain this sense of the world is moving without you. You have to jump on this, right? That comes with a lot of pressure, a lot of drama. And I wanted to capture specifically the learning of English as a bit of a traumatic experience, right? Because with that learning of English and the sensibilities of European like life, you build a chasm that grows bigger and bigger between the people who you are used to, the people you know, and the world that you're trying to reach. And that chasm lives to this day. So one of the biggest skills they brought back with a lot of the Afro-Brazilian returnees was architecture. So that changed the visual landscape of what Lagos looked like at the time. And because they were the ones who were building for Africans and Nigerians, they were building lots of edifices like the, what's it called? Christ Church, which is on Marina. But they also built like the Central Mosque, right? Just because they were, architecture as a service was the thing. It wasn't. So they built up a lot of that landscape, and I wanted to capture that as the beginnings of what we now know as urban Lagos. But a lot of it is actually just Lagos Island urban culture, right? Because a bunch of different people live here, we find different ways to engage with each other and things like that. So I put in these structures to kind of connote, that urban Lagos culture is a thing, and they were the beginnings of that thing. What is now Afrobeat and a lot of that stuff comes from a lot of those cultural influences that we're still enjoying till now. This particular painting was different because I started it with digital print. So I printed the figures on canvas before I started painting on the canvas at all. Um, I wanted that kind of commercial feel. I wanted to play around with that texture a bit. Then I layered it with acrylic paint to just kind of, outline some of the shapes I wanted to capture. For depth, I used a lot of thread stitching. Um, some like netting fabric material is in the piece as well, to give it a bit of like a three-dimensional engagement to it. And then on top of all of that, I put oil paint, because I love to finish my work with oil paint. I like the sleek feel of it, and it also gives me space to blend colors for over a longer period of time. It takes a little bit of time for oil to dry, so you still have some time, like ways to blend and touch it up and do things like that. So I finish it off in like with oil paint, and then so in the piece you'll be able to see all these different, like, you'll see the fabric, you'll see the thread that's just glued on, you'll see stitching, and then you'll see stenciling, actually, which is also new. That's how I got the buildings. And I actually wanted this very particular texture. If you go to Lagos Island, especially during like political time, there's lots of posters on the wall. But because there's lots of competition, people are always ripping the posters down. So there's this thick, like ripped paper feel that you kind of see on the wall sometimes. And I tried to capture that texture. So in the painting, you'll see some of the stencils are intact and some of them have this kind of ripped facade to it, because I was trying to capture that complexity. So the ripped pieces are more for like the older buildings, because some of them are more deteriorated over time, and then the newer structures are kind of left whole to depict that kind of transition through time. But that's how I worked on capturing texture in the piece. And I hope to inspire anybody who's looking at the painting to follow that trail and see what they find and see what that makes them feel, see how they feel about themselves, because as somebody who is like millennial, we are struggling with reckoning a lot of our history because a lot of it is problematic. That's the world's history is problematic, right? And before now, we were just really good at pretending like the problematic parts were not there. We were never really good with dealing with them. And now that at least we are more willing to, should it come up, I think it's a good practice for people to understand where they stand on the divide. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's ancestors were perfect. We all have problematic like histories that we all need to reconcile and deal with. And if I inspire people to do that, I think I'll be really proud of myself.